meeting about the possibility of the Historical Society acquiring the Visitor Information Center for their purposes, perhaps in conjunction with the Open Sky Society. There were a few options. It was sort of just a very preliminary discussion, I think, indicating that there was some interest from that in utilizing the building, as we were going to be taking departure from here sometime in the fall, perhaps to our new office digs. And at the end of that, I think we didn't make any promises. We listened to what was said, but the council really at this point has to start considering what direction we're going to be moving in. Are we going to have more discussions with that group? Are we going to open it up to the community? Do we have other ideas?
The consensus I heard at that meeting was that you're going to put it out for a public call or whatever.
Right. Okay. And would that be something that you, Councillor Sibiston, feel is the right thing to do?
Well, I think so. Definitely, because I've taken a course on economics, and I've been learning about government influence in the way that it can sometimes lead to less than desirable social circumstances. The government's not necessarily the best thing for the economy, and this is what I'm just a little bit concerned about. I'm just concerned about the devaluing of property, for one, and the local property values, and then the other thing is the what I refer to as the usurpation of public institutions and of local government functions for purposes that are not necessarily the best for the people that they're supposed to be working for. So this is what I'm a little bit concerned with, is some of those type of things where, for instance, an organization were to gain undue influence and power in the community through the effective usurpation of the public institutions and the social mechanisms under the Societies Act for purposes that are counter to the stated interests of A, the government of the Northwest Territories, B, the government of Canada and the laws of the country, and C, and basically where they're transgressing against the law, they're actually doing it, it's actually illegal because of the UN DRIP now means you can't just be a racist anymore. The good old days are gone and they're over, and you can't just be a racist now and trample over Native people and trample over Native rights. And that's what's happening. And the organizations in the community that are basically racially exclusive and racially motivated are basically what are, like I was watching, right? But they're destructive to the reconciliation process that is supposed to be due to Native people who have had everything taken away from them. And that's what all of these social programs, all of the opportunities in this community, they're supposed to be for the people who got ripped off, who had their lives robbed from them and stolen and taken from them. And instead, what I'm seeing is there's people just flooding in from all over the place, and it's just a fiesta of people. And now what I'm experiencing is racism now. Now I'm a minority now, right? Experiencing racism for not being white enough or whatever. I don't know. I can't figure it out, honestly. I'm trying to understand it. But what I'm referring to is really, it's really pervasive. It's in the community, and Fort Simpson is a racist hotbed of racist activity and racist organizations, and that's what it looks like to me. So if I be careful about organizations proclaiming to be Aboriginal, using marketing, using all of that stuff up front, because it's illegal to do that in Canada. It follows squarely outside of the law. And this is what I'm explaining, is that the usurpations of these institutions who are pretending to be cultural assets and pretending to be culturally motivated And of all of these people who are not from here, they're not culturally motivated, they're not culturally invested, and they're not culturally, and yet they're acting in a capacity as though they were, is actually illegal. And it's deceptive and it's wrong to do that to a people who are recovering and trying to get back from being nearly destroyed in the last 50 years.
Okay, so, yeah, you're saying, yeah, let's not,
I wouldn't go giving the farm to, I wouldn't go giving the farm to an organization that may or may not have the best interests of the community in mind.
Yeah.
Like I said, this is what I'm trying to get at, is that could there be an interest? It makes me really suspicious when people without a vested interest in the accuracy of historical and heritage information are making discernment and making distinctions about things that they don't know anything about. They have no basis for understanding. There's no multi-generational knowledge. There's no cultural heritage instincts at play. There is no cultural benefit for them to promote the benefit, and that's why the UN RIP is going to basically put them. It's going to be, have your last kick at the can, but it's illegal. It's going to be illegal.
No unsolicited proposals accepted from.
Well, it's going to be illegal really soon. Like I said, if you can set up the KKK or whatever. KKK wants the building, guys. You want it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're going to give it away to them?
So, Councillor Hassan, what do you have to say?
Thank you, Councillor Sebastian. We might agree with you on most of what you said, but here to be just on the point that we have this building, the VIC building, we are going to a different place. So we want this building. We can have the conditions on how this building will be run. We didn't decide it, as you mentioned earlier, and that was your recommendation that we can put it for public. And I prefer if even Councillor Sebastian follow up personally with this matter, if he's okay, that you can come with a proposal how we can use this building, and it doesn't have to cost us, and it serves the same purpose without us getting into attacking other organizations. And I'm not in the
I'm not attacking organizations. I'm attacking principles that are at play, and what it is that there's people taking advantage of our society and our good nature and our goodwill in our country. That's what's happening.
Let me finish, Councillor. So we don't have any problem I personally don't have any problem that we can appoint Councillor Sebastian to bring his proposal, whatever, and when we can see if it fit the need of this building, we will go with it. It doesn't have to be historical society, or it doesn't have to be any society. This building is made to serve a specific purpose. However, like the best way to serve this purpose, and it doesn't cost us as the village money on heating, on whatever. Well, that's what we want. So I think if you don't mind, if that's
I can put. I'll tell you what. Here's the thing, right? Is that it's a big public asset and it's a major asset owned by the village. I don't think that it was a $250,000 asset. I consider it to be in the $2.5 million range because of the replacement cost and the property value. I know what square footage is going for, commercial rates of square footage, and I know that I understand a little bit about real estate enough to know that the building is a major asset, and I wouldn't want to be, as much as I have experience in building maintenance and building management, because basically that's all I've done over my years of whatever. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that I'm in a situation where I could come up with an idea for, that normally takes a big effort. It's a business planning effort, and a business plan usually costs, a bunch of money because the planning process alone, just to figure out the numbers, whether or not it will be viable and self-sufficient or not, is got to take a planning process in itself. So I don't want to undertake a planning process for free that's going to cost 20. That's worth a second look or whatever. But I would just say that here we are going with a warming center over here, where we've got how about turn this into a warming center? I mean, it's free, it's here, it's a village asset. Like, we should be making use of our village assets a little bit more frugally, maybe. Like, because I get the whole graft thing, right? Where let's give it to them and they'll just give it to us and it'll all just come out in the wash and let's just forget about it. But what I mean is that that's key, it's nice, but it's just that when you're, I just don't think that it is necessarily the right approach to go and giving it away to organizations that misrepresent facts
Right.
regarding our community in spite of all of the best available information and the actual historical facts that there really are here, because there's the biggest cover-up you've ever seen in your entire life. And if you want to take a little quick look underneath the rock, you're going to find a lot of slime. And so this is what I'm explaining, is that this is situation, Fort Simpson is a crime scene as far as I'm concerned. And you guys can figure that out. And I understand why there's no LiDAR. I understand why there's no information, why there's no investigation. It's because of murder, that's why. And massive murder on a scale that nobody's ever witnessed happening right here. My dad was kidnapped as a little child.
Well,
His mother was kidnapped too.
let's stay on the topic.
Well, this is history.
Well,
This is the history getting covered up and blown over.
Get on
but
something
I
else.
accept what you're saying is that you don't want one particular group
Yeah, to
unsolicited.
get a big benefit so they can misrepresent me and my family and our actual
We-
history
we
and our
shouldn't
kids.
Probably,
So for their racist benefit.
yeah,
I'm not interested
I
in
think
that. I'm
the
not
fair-
interested in
the
those
fairest way to go,
organizations that do that.
if you were gonna allow the public or the organizations in the community to indicate what they think is best here and propose to us
Oh.
what they think would work
That's
best for the
standard
village.
procedure, right? Put out a request for proposals, put the building on the market. You know,
Yeah,
there's all
there's-
kinds of, what does a normal person do? You know, if they have a building, they have an excess housing, you normally put it on the market. Find out the value, put it on the
Yeah.
market, right?
And so,
And if there's no market for it, if the Fort Simpson is just that dead, and there just is no market for the building, then God help us.
yeah, I mean, there's several options, right? We could do, in order to even ascertain what would be best to do with the building, we could have a public meeting,
Yeah,
a
put it up
virtual
for
public
sale.
meeting. We could do a survey in the community, ask them, what is important to see in this building? Do we mothball it for a year or two while we wait to see what could be? Do we do a call for proposals and have sort of
That's the most
a
fair process.
grading on what we consider to be important? This always was a partially, at least, dedicated tourism building. Do we want to see that? How important is that in the whole scheme of things? Are we willing to contribute to seeing that continue? Are there funding sources that could make that viable for us in the future? Do we work with other partners to do that? Are there other higher and best uses for the community? And what value do they put on certain activities being in here? I recognize you're saying, you want us to see the best value made of this. And sometimes that's in dollars, but it could be in services or economic benefits and social benefits that the community gains from this building that will be not always measured in dollars.
Yeah, I just wouldn't give it away to a historical society who doesn't have any local people barely involved and never has, and has basically just turned the oldest building, the oldest, most scariest, most horrifying structure on the island and rebuilt it just exactly like it was, just to terrorize me again from when I was a little kid. I'm still
Right.
scared now every time I look at it. It puts a chill down my spine because I remember what the furnace looked like in the basement. And it creeped me out.
Right. But I mean, that's a separate
Oh, I
issue.
know, nobody knows that.
Yeah.
Right, because I had to, but I went to Bombas Hall. Here I am, survivor.
Yeah. Like, we do know the condition of this building, the age, the cost to operate. We know these things, right? And maybe if I could just hear from a couple of the other counselors, like what their feelings are on what we should do with this building and what process we should use to figure out what's best. Councillor Lafferty.
I don't think the intention was ever to give it out to somebody. I know for myself, I don't want to see the building given out. I mean, they're going to have to pay for it. They're going to have to buy it or rent it, or, they're going to have to pay their way, whoever the building is given is, for the best price.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're not just going to give it away. let's take it easy. I mean, we're not that silly.
No, and, initially the reason that I think ITI kind of, was ever involved here was that we had proposed to them that as a tourism building with tourism staff in here year round, we would be interested to hear what they had to say, if they'd be willing to pay the correct amount to rent and maintain this building, so to take that financial burden off the village as we move to the newer offices more. They're more suited for our office staff. I mean, this is, the design of it is with the large rooms and open spaces is meant more for viewing and showing like you would do in a tourism facility. It's not really your standard office environment, although there are a few offices in here. And this was always a modified office space, and we knew that. It wasn't really the best space for us even, but could it be for someone else? There's things like doing a survey to find out what people in the community think. After all, it is their building and it's been here for over 30 years. They may have some ideas and thoughts. Maybe we should try to get more input. I think there's a risk that if we go ahead too far on one route without the community's backing, that there'll be a bit of a backlash. The people will find out. We will find out that they have different ideas about this, and so even putting a call for proposals out there to see what ideas are out there, if the public isn't really behind that type of thing, they may feel, no, well, depending on what happens, the village should always own this building, for example. Should we always maintain ownership of this building and simply rent the building?
Sean?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you. Remember we had a fall meeting in the late fall? There was a guy that was going to be doing some community planning. We talked to him. He was not from the NWT. Who was that guy?
The delegate from Fulton?
Yeah, we've got a contract with him to do the actual community planning process, and he would have started already if not for the COVID. So
I think this would be appropriate to put it on in that file. And
right.
and as he's doing his survey, or how he said he would do it, I think that would be a good place to starting to engage the community on how they'd like to see that building to be used.
right, that's a good suggestion, because things shouldn't be taken in isolation, right? What we do with this building, it should be looked at in the totality of what does the community want and what's important to it. And if there's things that this building can assist with providing, then yeah, that's a good time to bring it up, is in our community plan revisions and upgrades.
So maybe we could, that's what we could do tonight, is maybe have a consensus that we would maybe include that in his file, and maybe Kevin can discuss what we were thinking here.
Right.
I just wonder, the survey's been done and it's been circulated, and we've
Right.
I think we've got about 30 or 40 completed surveys in already.
Mhm.
It would have been nice if this was in the survey,
Right,
but it's not.
that it's not.
So I think, there's going to be more, like Matt is going to come to Fort Simpson as soon as he's able, and there will be in community engagement, but the clock's ticking if we wait till too long.
I don't think it's too late. If you only have 30, well, you can always redo it and go back to the 30 you have and add that to the survey. It doesn't hurt to ask, so maybe you can let them know that we want this in that survey.
Yeah, it's a very particular thing, but it's
a very important thing for the community.
yeah, it's a big important decision for the village, and you could see that people would get they've got their ideas about what this should become. And I don't want the community fighting between itself with different groups thinking that, we've got to beat the other group to get this building. I think whatever happens here should be a consensus amongst the community members that, what are we looking for here? Is it long-term use of the building that guarantees the village doesn't incur costs? Is it to increase the economic activity in the area, or to perhaps use it to entice new government departments to come to Fort Simpson? Who knows, right? But what's our position on growing the town and increasing services? Are we always just looking for not-for-profits to come up with more services? It's hard to tell. And while I know personally, I would like to see the building stay in the tourism area. It seems that ITI just hasn't really responded positively to our suggestions. That doesn't mean we couldn't push harder, but at this point, maybe it is better to reach out to the public and see where they're at. And yeah, for sure, I think maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, there are councillors, but I hear that, no, we're not going to do unsolicited proposal calls. We're going to come up with something else where we engage more fully with the community and try to see what at least is out there. I mean, that's one way to do it, is a call for proposals, highlighting what we think is important. So when we score these proposals, with no guarantee that we'll pick any one, we tell the public what we think is important as far as using the building. We're considering costs, continuing costs to the village. So those that are able to pay more, yes, you have, and then the benefits that accrue to the community in different areas, economic, social. These have a value. We can come up with a way to put that down as well. And yeah, there's things to look at, but time is getting a little shorter. I think we have to acknowledge that by the time fall rolls around, if we don't have something in place, we'll be looking at shuttering the building for a winter, unless we have something else in mind.
Sean, this is Celine.
Yep.
I never heard back any comments about putting it as part of the community planning. Is that off the table now, or was that
I just wonder how council feel about a simple Facebook poll.
I
know
could I get somebody to answer my question first, please?
Is it possible? Okay. Well, in answer to that, I'll let Councillor Hassan add something.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I believe your idea is good, and I believe we can reach to the same guy. And as he's a strategist, I know the survey is almost like halfway done, but still it doesn't hurt to take all what the discussion, all the ideas from Councillor Sebiston, from Deputy Mayor, and all these, and give it to him, and let us see his advice about that. Then we can go. Still, we have to involve the public in the decision at the end of the day. But I agree with the Deputy Mayor. We can try that. I don't think it's late. It's still
add to the survey.
Yeah, you contact him and give him all these ideas and
See what he says.
See what he says.
Okay, Councillor Ashford, thank you.
The next one on the agenda is the strategic plan.
Right.
And we're supposed to have a workshop on that soon, so why don't we include that building and whatever else we have in the plan and work on it through the workshop, and then put it to this guy we're supposed to have hired and see what he can do with it.
Yeah, there may be a way.
I agree with Marie. But I think I would still like Kevin to reach out to the surveyor and try to get him to do it. That has to get done, and see what he says, and then have the strategic planning that Marie is referring to and discuss it there. But personally, I would think we would go through the protocol and maybe bring it up to the Tri-Council and then let them know what we think we might do. Just to give them, they may have plans too, I don't know, but.
Okay, yeah, no, so bring it up through the Tri-Council, bring it up through our community planner, and bring it up in our own strategic planning processes to see if that's something. Look at the goals. I don't see a goal that exactly identifies how the village will use assets to improve communicating or working with partnerships. But that could be a goal.
Well, tourism is
Yeah.
on the list,
And,
so.
and tourism being a specific goal, how do we support that and other economic activities? We haven't identified that and then made some sub actions. So.
Well, it definitely fits in one of those categories, so we have to discuss it.
Okay, but it's a good way. So that's a 3-pronged approach then. Tri-Council, the strategic planning that we're going to, talk about it a little more and see if we can't put it into our plan in a general way, so at least it's there. And lastly, get our community planner apprised of the situation so that he can give us back some feedback. Maybe he can suggest some ways here.
Excellent.
Any more thoughts?
It's worth the planning because it's a valuable asset. It's a major asset, big building, millions of dollars. And, we would be remiss to do anything else other than to try to, manage the assets of the company, right, to their best benefit.
Okay.
So I think that's a reasonable course there.
Okay. Yeah, well, we'll move ahead in those directions for now. And I thought that was just important that we review that. So good, we got some good feedback there. Now, the strategic plan, all right. So we actually heard one idea that needs to be investigated more fully and incorporated somehow into the strategic plan here, how we use our assets. And I can see that, this is going to take even a little bit of a guided discussion. I'd like to suggest that Mike Drake or somebody from MACA assists us as that kind of lead person to put us through the discussion. I like Mike Drake's abilities in that area, and if council's okay with it, perhaps I could get him to come in for a Saturday morning meeting
Our strategic plan?
to do an update on our strategic plan, with the idea that things like this building need to be incorporated, the use of building and assets. But there'll be some other things too. We'll go through it step by step. Maybe we'll review each of these and see what's no longer as important, what needs to be added. This was always looked to me a sort of not quite a completed strategic plan. We spent a few hours going over this, but we didn't have a full review of it.
I asked for maps, right? And that was the one thing that I asked for.
Yeah.
Maps, good maps. Is there any good maps? We're dealing with questions here that are important, dealing with land, hard assets, firm assets of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And we don't even have the basic planning tools that I would take in any garden project that I was working on. I set drones up in the air to make my work plan so I'm not stepping on my own toes. That's how I work. And this is what I'm explaining, is that we have to do the same thing. We have to use the technology that we've got that's available, because otherwise, there's somebody else out there that is, right? And how do you become relevant in the modern world if you're not even trying to keep up?
Yeah, and you'll notice goal 3, investigate options for developing land use plan. Well, in there, I guess one of the actions should be something like acquire better planning tools, right? Or
You bet.
or partner
You
with
bet,
those
more
that do have
information.
them.
Well, please, more information. It was like this thing, I'll tell you what is a massive industry worldwide is these recovery of World War II artifacts.
Yeah.
And apparently there are big pits that are dug that are full of them, close by in a couple of locations here in Fort Simpson. And with correct information, it would not only enable us to locate potential hazards through understanding where maybe disturbances have been, but also for us to know that there may be cultural resources, heritage resources that we can dig up and make a TV show about it like everybody else in the bloody world.
Right. Yeah.
That's all I'm saying, right? It's not like it's.
Yeah. I mean, these things that, yeah, go ahead, Councilor Morrow.
There's a gentleman in town, Dwayne Lafferty. He's got a business in BC that does a lot of aerial drone work, mapping for mine companies and whatnot, if you're interested.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and yeah, because this, a lot of councils use this strategic plan as really the tool to guide what they're doing and what major topics they're getting involved with. And if you can't find it on there, all you're doing is just piecemeal work, doing things on emergency basis when they pop up. Or somebody comes in and says, I want this in the community, and everybody's attention gets diverted to that, and then you got to deal with that, right? But the strategic plan is supposed to be a well thought out, long range plan with a lot of actions that you can follow in general to guide your, the eventual creation of what you want. But yeah, rather than being reactive, we've got to set it in this plan. And really, every time that the council's sort of going off on a different tangent and you can't find it even referenced generally in the strategic plan, it's perfectly fine to say, well, wait a minute, where did this all come from? How is the council going over this way when we've never really identified that as one of our key goals or strategic, it's not in the strategic plan. And so that's really what this plan has to become, is that tool. And having these kinds of discussions helps us to see when we go back to this. I hope to have like a moderator qualified to help lead us through this. Superintendent Maka, I believe, would be a good one to approach, whether he does it or he gets somebody to come in. That's what happened before. This is how this plan kind of got to the point where it is. We had somebody fly in and from the department helped us with this, somebody who works on these kinds of planning, strategic plans all the time. And so I can do that. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
For that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so next thing, NWTAC resolutions. I just wanted to bring that up really quick because sometime in late February, there's going to be an NWT Association of Communities meeting. In the past, it usually lasts a few days. They get a lot of presenters and different things. I don't know how it'll be this time. But part of it is, like an AGM, you have resolutions that are put forward and adopted by the whole organization. And these get put in front of government, the ministers, with the support of the entire organization behind it if they get approved. So when you have issues that are larger than just your community, they have to be either regional or territorial wide issues that affect municipalities in some way. And you can put forth a resolution, with all your whereas and therefores, identifying why it is an important thing that the NWTAC should adopt this resolution. You can use background information as well. In the past, Fort Simpson's done things like put forth a resolution on riverbank erosion. We actually have, and it's been kept current, that resolution, which every year the government has to look at all these resolutions and state what they've done. Have they moved in any direction on these resolutions? So we get updated year after year. Sometimes there's some forward movement in the government on these. We put forth a motion in the past about funding ambulance services for the highways, which we do not get specific ambulance service or emergency road services. If we have to go out on the highway, we do that with no funding from the territorial government. Some communities actually don't do it anymore. Fort Simpson doesn't. Our volunteer fire department and ambulance service uses road rescue equipment that we purchased with our own money, and we go out there and we save people. Well, the volunteers do. And it looks good on Fort Simpson because a lot of times those people are our own people too. But it's their highway. It's the territorial highway. And they've always had trouble acknowledging that they should pay for that service. Ambulance and road rescue going past the municipal boundary. We're responsible for what's inside the municipal boundary. And this is one of those weird situations. So that is on the NWTAC's lists, continuing list of resolutions. Every year you adopt those continuing ones that are no longer important or have been dealt with, get dropped off. So if there is anything, as I say, that's important enough for us to be concerned about, I think there was one a couple of years ago about buying leased land here in Fort Simpson too, that we were encouraging the government to look at how that could happen. Existing leases that were developed in the community, was it possible to look at selling those leases to the people that owned it in order to advance economic development in the community? So there you go. It's not something that off the top of your head, but I would encourage you to go to the NWTAC's website and just look at all of the resolutions that they've adopted in the past and still are doing currently, trying to lobby for. Because that's really what the organization does. That and some training and lobbying is primarily what they do for us. So that the resolutions are important. I was able to get that resolution adopted last year about the Liard Bridge study. So that, because it's of a regional concern, that bridge and the Mackenzie Highway is a regional concern. It's not just for Fort Simpson. That was adopted as a resolution and it sits there now, and the government has to look at it every year until something gets done. And it gives you publicity because it attracts the attention and support of other community leaders, and territorial politicians have to face those resolutions and give answers. Yes, Councillor Hassan.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question. How strong this association in regards to these resolutions? Because I noticed, I was following last year resolutions, and one of them was about enforcing the public boards. And what I've seen, there is no any change in public boards. It's still public boards, just like window dressing in the NWT. There is nothing, there is no change. So I don't know how strong this organization or this association in regards to this kind of resolution. Because if it's just we go and we push them to pass a resolution and they are not going to work on it, I don't know, it's going to be the same like the public boards. Thank you.
Yeah, and point taken. I think the organization NWTAC is funded by government. They're primarily funded by MACA, so they're not independent, not totally independent, but they're meant to represent our concerns to government, and they work with government. Government's looked upon as a partner. But you're right. If nothing has happened on that resolution, though, when you're in the meeting, you bring it up, because that every resolution gets reviewed. And at that point you say, hey, here's my chance to say, why is it that I'm looking and I haven't seen any government action on this? And why is that? Who's responsible? And the minister might even be sitting there responsible. And But you'll find that there's always been, every resolution does get looked at by government. There's a response. There's always a response to every resolution. May not be what you like, but there will be a response. Councillor Lafferty?
When do we have to have these resolutions in by?
It says by January 22nd.
Okay, so. Okay.
And I'm just trying to think, has the village brought up any regional or territorial concern, something that affects us, but that we could ask other communities to support us in trying to change? Does anything come to mind for any of the councillors? Yes, Councillor
I was
Lafferty?
just wondering, where's the meeting being held?
I think it's just virtual. We'll all be logging in by laptops or
Oh,
cell phones and Zoom calls and
Oh.
things like that.
okay.
It's too bad we don't have better teleconferencing equipment right here, but usually there's 2 delegates from Fort Simpson. And because it might be this virtual, certainly others could watch. There's no saying that you can't be allowed to watch it. But the voting is that we get two votes
Okay.
for the size of our community. And usually the SAO is in attendance as well, because there's training, and it's not going to be as good if it's virtual. I can pretty well tell you that, because there's a lot of relationship building and meeting people at these events that's outside of just sitting around a table. That's very useful. And they have a trade show where you go and you meet and discuss with people
Mhm.
different things. So unfortunately, I guess if it's virtual, it's just the way it is this year, but still, there's some value in it. We'll have to appoint a couple of representatives for the village to sit in. I imagine these meetings are going to kind of go on all day for a couple of days. Whether they'll shorten it down much, I'm not sure. I haven't seen that yet.
Sean?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Okay, so these resolutions will have to be discussed with the council, and
Right.
then we come up with a resolution
Yeah,
and forward it to them before January 26th.
that's right. It has to actually be a village council resolution passed.
Okay, so that's good.
Yeah,
So last year, I didn't attend. I did want to go, but I didn't. I think it was last year or the year before. I think it was last year. I had brought up to the executive director of NWTAC that we wanted them to have a presentation on the framework agreement with the First Nations and the municipality and how they're going to work together. She never did get back to me, but I guess they did have a speaker, of which you were there,
right.
and they denied me going over there as deputy mayor to sit in on that meeting. So anyways, that came about. So I'm thinking as a village council, and we work closely with the tri-council, maybe the next step for NWT to do is to help us work together and see how we can, if there is going to be a framework agreement, which I don't agree with, and I don't think First Nation does, but if things happen, we need to know what's going on so we can work hand in hand with them. What's going to happen at the end of the day once it happens, and what's going to happen if it doesn't. So we need to start engaging the community and educating them on what this issue is all about and what it would mean to us. So I'm thinking of trying to put a resolution together for that. So I just want to mention that to everybody now so they can think about it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I remember that the federal department, and now it's split into two sections. The one that used to be Indian Northern Affairs or Aboriginal Affairs. It's split into two different departments, and one of them was there at this NWTAC meeting to answer questions on that. Shane, you remember Shane used to be here as Economic Development Officer a long time ago? He works for the one department. And I just forget the acronym for it, but yeah. They didn't delve into it very much, I can tell you that.
Well, that's not acceptable.
Yeah, it was actually more of a talk about the new departments rather than the framework agreement, the thing you were interested in and how that was going to be handled. And yeah, but so yeah, I mean, that's a good idea. And certainly that's something we could consider as a council to put forth a resolution in that area.
I don't think we have too much of a choice because that's the First Nations agreement that's going to happen.
Right.
And we're living in a community where 70% of their population is First Nations.
Okay.
So just to be proactive and to be out of courtesy, we should start addressing it and try to know more about it so we can all make a good decision on it.
Okay. Well, there, I'll leave it at that. No other comments from anybody? That's
No.
probably more than I wanted to say about that, but there you go. And
Thank you.
okay, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. 7D, COVID issues. So before we get into that, let me just update. I think Deputy Mayor, you and I and Councillor McPherson were all on that conference call on Friday with.
I wasn't on there. Not this last Friday you're talking about?
Yeah.
I was not aware of such
Oh,
a
okay.
meeting. I wasn't on it.
I know Councillor McPherson was on there and our SAO was on there too. So they were dealing with updates primarily to do with the vaccination schedule, concerns about the vaccinations. And of course, in Fort Simpson, we've had vaccinations occurring at the health center. Everybody that works at the health center that wanted one got one. And the elders in the long-term care attached to the health center all got the vaccine as far as I know. So that was step one. Step two for Fort Simpson is sometime, well, next week we're being used as a bit of a base and the smaller communities around us are getting vaccinated in their entirety. Anybody in a smaller community will be offered the vaccine. They're not going to come back a second time and give it to the younger adults and just do the seniors. They're doing everybody that wants it. The week after, starting on January 18th, and it's not set yet exactly, but sometime between January 18th and the 31st, Fort Simpson will be having vaccinations again for everybody over 60 and anybody who has health concerns or health issues, immunity, lower immunity response. So people with diabetes and things like that, yes, they'll all qualify to get a vaccine. They'll all be eligible at some future point, but before the end of March, everybody who's an adult over 18 will be getting the vaccine, but not in January. That will come later on, but before the end of March. That's kind of the gist of what we got there. And there were some questions about, are we going to have a vaccine passport? And once you get a vaccine, can you travel? The answer is no, not anytime soon without the normal isolation procedures because they're not sure if you can still be a carrier even if you've had the vaccination. So until we get herd immunity here and probably down south, some of these things aren't going to change drastically. At least that's what we've been told. Now, just to get back to Councillor Sibiston's concern, just to go over that again, you said that there were some people that were allowed in the community, and you thought that that just showed that
May have been
it's not a real
traveling down
emergency.
south over Christmas holidays.
Did you
Well,
believe it?
did you read the news, right?
Yeah.
right? Regarding all of the controversy surrounding government officials who traveled
Right.
south without, right?
I could tell you at that meeting that we were, one community leader did express disappointment in the fact that, that head of the task force had chosen to do that because it didn't look very good.
Well, this is where it begs the question of reasonability, right? Regarding the Charter of Rights and Freedoms breach. When can the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms expect to be reinstated? These are reasonable questions. These are as reasonable questions, the most fundamental, basic questions that I can even come up with. The most pressing, urgent question of our day.
Right.
Regarding what kind of a country are we going to live in, right? And this is what it comes down to. Are we going to live in a country where we can travel, or are we going to live in a country where we can't travel? And that's what it comes down to. And like I said, if this is where we're going to be living in a country where we can't travel anymore, then I need to basically, then I want to know that now so I can start seeking refuge in other countries where there still are freedoms entrenched in their constitution that they haven't subverted.
To leave here, Randy, I'm not sure what you're trying to say. Can you be more specific as to what you want us to do?
Yeah, I would like to urge those people to be fired. I think those people to be fired.
Want us to consider what kind of action you want us to consider for the health of our community?
Yeah, exactly. To fire those people who did that. Those people who are living a double standard and are willing to trample on our constitutional rights and then enjoy their own conveniences at our benefit. I disagree with it, and I think that they should be fired. So if you want one counselor, I'll tell you what, that's what I think. And that's what, like I said, how can they stand up with any moral authority, tell people anymore, how can they can't even do it with a straight face anymore.
So you
right?
could,
It's a joke, right? And the joke's on us.
Yeah.
It's not funny for us because the joke's been on us and they're playing a joke on us, and I'm not very impressed.
So Randy, you want us to consider making a statement?
Yeah, I would, because this is otherwise, like I said, what has this all been all about?
Okay, then I got to think about it some more then, because it's pretty heavy.
Well, it is, because here's the thing too, is when things are going to get better. Once you get vaccinated, you still can't leave. Once you face mask, you still got to wear face mask. You still got to do this. You still got the whole thing is just it's unbelievable. It's preposterous, completely against any free democratic society. Anything that's ever been measured in entire history. It's unprecedented. Nobody's ever seen anything like it before, and it's illegal.
I'm sorry, Randy.
What I'm explaining is that it's illegal.
I'm still thinking about the.
okay. Well, let me.
It's illegal. That's the main point of what I'm trying to say, is that it's illegal to take away people's rights and freedoms from them, and then flout the law on the other side and go and flying around when you're governing a task force of people and then doing that double standard. It's actually illegal.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just,
okay, so.
Yeah,
I just need some time to think about that as a counselor. I'm not sure how everybody else thinks about it, but I need some time to think about it before, as a counselor, I would mention something about those bureaucrats to get fired for not following that by giving us. I'm not sure. I'd like to go around the table to see what everybody thinks.
I already said he should be fired. I said it on Facebook. I'd say it here. I actually don't have a problem with that because of the fact that they were in a leadership position. Yeah. I mean, but that's me. That's just my own personal opinion. But let me, you can't see it, but Councillor Lafferty's had her hand up for a while, so I'd just like to give her a chance.
Yeah, I'm always last on the block. Okay,
Too
there
polite.
are workers from this community that have gone home and they've come back and they're isolating in their camps, as far as I know, for 2 weeks. And so these people are okay. But I think what Randy's talking about is from Yellowknife, the head people there. There was a couple people that did go on holiday. And there are some in Alberta that did that, some in Ontario, and some were fired and some were not fired. Like in Alberta, the premier he wasn't going to take action against them. He just let it go. Okay, so, and I don't know what's gonna happen here with,
Well, but if
With
the
the
premier
people.
did it, then how can she take action against anybody?
We don't know that.
The premier,
Well, I thought that was that was the big front page news all over Facebook, was that, that was a fact.
Don't believe, don't believe everything you see on Facebook.
I think the only,
What I'm trying to explain is that
I
if
don't
that's
think
the
she
case,
went anywhere.
if it is
Yeah.
the case, then how can that person, if, for instance, the premier, for instance, has gone on holidays down south and can't come back, how can they tell anybody else you're not allowed to do that with a straight face?
right, I mean, assuming that happened, but I have not heard that.
Well, that was
Yeah.
on Facebook. That was what I thought the whole controversy was all
Yeah.
about.
No,
we could
it was-
ask.
It wasn't her, I don't think.
Well,
But they
yeah,
were-
apparently it was her and Rocky Simpson and another person who might have even been closer to our region than we know.
Councillor Hassan.
Thank you. I agree with you, Councillor Sylvester, but I want to just tell you guys something. The war is not only here. The war is really big, and I don't know if we have the right to do that as councillors, that we pass a resolution to request the government to fire these people, or we have the right to pass a resolution that we are against the secretariat, which is $84 million spending on people, friends' salaries, while the same government is taking the, I can say, the privilege of the residents of the NWT if they go down south or if they go for any reason and they come back, instead of the government pays their isolation, they have to pay it from their pocket, while the same money and 10 times that money being spent on some people's salaries and for an incompetent department, which at the beginning they didn't do their job. Then I created for them another department, which I'm spending more money from these taxpayers' money, from the COVID money, federal, whatever. Like, our war is really big. I can call it, it's corruption. But who is corrupt? We don't know. The whole system is dilapidated. That's the word they can use. So if we touch this part, we have a bigger area to talk about more than fire this person. That person definitely, definitely they went there and they came back. They got paid for their isolation, and that's individual case. But our problem is not individual. Our problem is, let us look at the picture, at the bigger picture. It's really very blurry, black, dark image. Thank you.
Right, and I think you're on the right track, that our main concern here should be the fact that if we were to travel now, and for what looks like the imminent future, we'd have to pay to self-isolate in a hotel in one of the major centers still, even after we get vaccinated. I'm not hearing a whole lot about how that would be speeded up with these fast, rapid tests or anything else. So we're going to stay disadvantaged in this community because Yellowknife, Hay River, Fort Smith, and Inuvik, they'll still be able to travel down south, come back, and isolate at home. We just cannot do that. I had brought that up with the CPHO again. I said, well, the village, the Tri-Council passed a resolution and forwarded it to you, asking that all medical travel people that could isolate in Fort Simpson be allowed to isolate in Fort Simpson. The answer to that was no. Only certain cases would be allowed, and they would be considered exemptions. And that was the way forward for Fort Simpson. Now, if we got to wait another year before we can travel, even though most of us in Fort Simpson and all the surrounding communities will have been vaccinated, and we still have to pay to isolate at a hotel in Yellowknife to support their hotels when ours are dying, I got a problem with that, you know?
I just have a little thing to add.
Councillor Hassan.
You know, honestly, and in addition to what you said, and in addition to what Councillor Sebastian mentioned and Deputy Mayor mentioned, you know, honestly, why are we looking at Yellowknife? We have incompetence in the whole in our community here. The government departments. I can tell you guys something. We are in the most difficult, dangerous emergency in the history of the human beings. And you guys can call the head of the health and social service right now. You might not get hold of them. Where are they? They are taking holidays, vacation,
vacation somewhere else. The problem is, let's start from here. We don't have to go to Yellow Line. Let's start from here, from our community here. I remember we been in touch with some government departments. They are nowhere to be found in our own community. Let us fix our problem here, then we can go to Yellow Line. Thank you.
Yeah, the health department, the Nahende building is practically empty on the health side. I think there's one, and it's the head of health, the what's his name there from
Wilson.
Wilson. Yeah, I think he was the only one in there. I went in there with Burl that one day, and we cleaned the building, and it was only him. And they've got 2 big offices, and he was the only one in all that area. And yet they've got the Shish building over here. And there's a whole bunch of counselors. They're full in there. There are about 6 to 8 people working in there, but they're paying for rent in the Nahende building, and those offices are all empty. You know, I can't figure that out.
How many staff was supposed to be there?
It used to be full at one time. Like had so many workers that they had rented the other part also. So and then that one was full. They had about 3 or 4 workers in there. And the other one with, oh gosh, there's 1, 2, 3. There's about 10 offices in that health side, the bigger part, and it's empty.
Councilor Morrow.
I just had a question about, what's the difference between a request of dismissal or a vote of no confidence, or even a petition of no confidence?
All right, I mean, we would, if you wanted the strongest kind of motion, you'd ask that they be fired, but you could say, yeah, we have no confidence in the leadership of the organizations that are telling us to do something when their own leaders don't follow the advice they're giving us. At least it would be on the record that we feel that they have to do better. Doesn't mean it's going to change, but it's a stated position. I mean, I think that those individuals got away lightly because while they were reported in the press, that was pretty much the end of it. It was glossed over, and it's almost like up here because so many people work for the government, they're afraid to speak.
Imagine that.
Yeah, now we're getting to the problem.
Yeah, you touched on something there.
And so the government is able to quieten these things down, put a tamp on top of it there, and button it up pretty quick, I find. But yet, it seems like in Simpson, and every other community up here, that there's a 2-tier system for how COVID got dealt with. If you're a government worker, they treated you like the rest of us had the plague. And they need to keep us, being the general public, as far away from them as possible. You had to knock on office doors, you had to phone, make appointments, you had to walk in with masks and everything else. Meanwhile, the rest of us are out in the street, exposed in all kinds of different ways. And unfortunately, that kind of created a divide, I think, in the community where, government workers are treated like they're special.
And even the clinic,
Yeah.
they wouldn't let us in there for appointments. Even now, like they'll still issue our pills and that to the pharmacy there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't go in for our appointments, and this has been going on for almost a year now.
Yeah.
Yeah. They only take emergency cases. Some days you can't even get through to the,
And this, the warming center, which the village is soon going to be signing a contribution agreement to take over, we haven't had any direction from the health department or the MACA emergency department as to how we should deal with the clients that go in there, protect the volunteers that go there, or staff. No supplies were sent over. No early vaccination schedule was offered to volunteers, even though that is to me, a health and social services frontline worker dealing with those people. But if at the hospital you're a cook or a janitor, you get the vaccination because you're in that building. So it really seems that there are different
Priorities, yeah.
different priorities and ways. I mean, the government, because of the union and protecting employees, they've stepped right up and done a great job. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. But the rest of us, well, there were no boxes of masks ever sent to the community, to people in general.
Yeah.
Can you remember any masks or any materials or hand sanitizers ever been made available generally to the general public?
Just to the band and the Métis and
Right, for the
here, I
office
guess,
workers.
yeah.
Yeah.
But you could give them out to the community too.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
$80 million for the COVID task force over 2 years, and they still never managed to send over any $5 masks. But we, as a community, spent money to order masks, which we're going to give out. By the way, do we know anything about that? I mean, everybody's ordering masks still, right?
Well, again, we'll chase them up this week and find
Yeah.
out what's going on.
Because I mean, COVID down south is still just roaring.
It's raging.
Yeah, we're living in a really a great place, and you know, I don't want to say too many bad things about the CPHO, because at least whatever's happened so far, we've either been lucky or you know, combination of luck and good planning. We have had very few cases of COVID go around, thankfully, and hopefully it stays that way. But
If you believe them.
yeah, do we believe them?
That's the point that I don't. So, like I said, I was reading about this. I found out information about it. I did my research. I did my math, and let's just put it like this: it's a desperate situation for the government of the Northwest Territories when they realized that they were not going to be able to make oil and gas money on the devolution deal that they signed. And they basically, now they're in a bankrupt situation where they have no, and so they're starting to leverage properties to the bank, and they're basically foreclosed. The bank's basically starting to shut down the properties on the thing because they're not bringing in the money that they were supposed to under the devolution deal. That's what happened. And so now they're, like I said, we're just under new management, and this whole thing is just basically, I don't, like I said, I don't believe it. I didn't believe it from the start, and I don't believe it right now, because the whole thing about it is, and here's the thing is, how can you expect me to, when the premier or the chief, when these people are going off and flying to other countries now and flying back and just, you know what I mean? And the leadership, basically, I'm a behaviorist. I can only believe the behavior that I see, right? Everybody says they can spout all kinds of platitudes and big speeches, but the action speaks louder than the words. So I could tell by the action that they're not scared. So those people with the greatest position to be knowledgeable about it are actually not scared at all.
Right.
So they're not even scared to go traveling. They don't see it as a health risk. They might die.
But Randy, if you see in the States, the amount of deaths and the COVID cases, like it's
I just don't
dangerous.
believe it.
Right now in
You gotta
Canada, look
believe
every
it.
day,
You know,
every day
you know
Canada,
what?
they're dying.
there was people that were dying that still didn't believe that about COVID, and they were dying of COVID.
Edmonton, they're dying every day.
It's people that are, I don't know what to say. Like I said, the
Yeah,
whole
I
thing
mean,
is,
that's the
Saskatoon, Canada,
disbelief.
Winnipeg, there's
That's the
people dying
disbelief
every
part
day.
about it. You probably have to get it before you're going to believe it.
I
Yeah,
already told you, I got it. I had it in April or whatever.
Yeah.
Because when I went to Yellowknife, I explained that. We were sitting at Super 8. We were with a whole bunch of Chinese people watching the whole thing unfolding on TV. And I'll be darned if I didn't get terribly sick. And I was terribly sick for weeks. My younger Stephanie's younger brother was coughing his lungs out for 3 months. He's only 26 years old. He's a healthy guy.
too much
Doesn't
weed.
smoke. So what I was explaining is that this is the way things go, right? Is that now, would they have ever known? No, they wouldn't. And was there ever a testing? No, there wasn't. There wasn't even a test invented at the time. And then B, was there everything? No, there wasn't.
Well,
So
there's-
explaining is that even if it
there's
had,
some
I'm
of
not
us
saying
that
it
figure
has.
we
I'm
had
not
it
saying
in
that was
December.
COVID-19. All I'm saying, if it was, they never would have known it anyways. So
Right.
that's all I'm trying to say.
Well, they're dying,
There's a
let
lot of
them die.
unknowns, there's a lot of variables, and I'm not gonna be a guy that's going out to say, I'm sure about this because I saw this on TV. Well, I don't believe it, like I said, and if they were all up in arms, if I'm seeing at the leadership level, those kind of examples, when they're making those kind of examples, it makes me beg the question, if they're not scared and they know everything about it, they're the ones who are in touch with all the doctors, they're in touch with the chief public health officer, and if it's still an acceptable risk for them to take off on holidays and come back, And they're the ones with all the knowledge, the most up-to-date, specific, detailed knowledge. Then who am I to disagree with them and to say that, no, it is a risk? No, I'm going to back the premier. I'm going to back the chief medical officer on what their behavior told me. Their behavior said the risk is over and there is no risk. That's why we're going on holidays now. See you guys later, you chumps, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks. And that's what happened. That's actually the real story. So while we can live in a make-believe world where people are real scared, and these are actually the actual top officials are actually not scared, and they're actually on holidays right now in a different country. So
I think if you have any specific calls to action or recommendations that we should be making in the form of a motion to the government, bring it to the next meeting, and you could make your case and we can vote on that.
We will.
I'll do that.
Okay, let's call our meeting. Good discussion. Good discussions, everybody. And we have no in camera, so with the general acceptance of everybody, unless anybody has any last thoughts, I'd like to call the meeting. Okay, let's adjourn our meeting. Thanks, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you and good night, everybody.